I'm not so perfect, baby, yeah, you are. Come right.
How's it going, everyone? Ever since I made the review on this here, the Snackbox Micro, I've been getting a lot of questions about switching to Hitbox and whether you should switch. I want to preface everything that I'm about to say with the fact that your input device is completely your preference, right? So whatever you're good with, whatever's comfortable for you, I suggest you stick with that. Now, if you're interested in switching to Hitbox, let's talk about some pros and cons. So the first pro I want to talk about is the difference in form factor, right? So you can have a full-size stick, right? This is a full-sized Hitbox arcade controller. It's pretty, it's pretty big. It's not as big as a Qualm Obsidian though. It's smaller than that. And then you also have the Micro, right, which is super tiny and about, I'd say, a little bit bigger than a PS4 controller, but it's a lot thinner and sleeker, so you can really just store this anywhere, right? You can put this in your back pocket or something. So that is a big pro for me, right? Is the difference in form factor and customizability. With something like a PS4 controller, you're going to be limited, right? You can maybe change the color and maybe the buttons or something, but overall, for the most part, you're going to have the same controller all the time. For something like this, you can switch out these buttons, right? These come standard as Sanwa. I think these are going to be your red Sanwas, and these will be like white. These that I have in here are gamer fingers, which are mechanical switches. They have MX Cherry Speed Silvers underneath. They're not like I forget what those switches are in the Sanwa buttons, but the plastic kind of ones. And these are also mechanical switches. These are a different brand, but these are also silvers, I think. Or maybe reds, I can't really remember. An advantage, I think, to the mechanical switch over the Sanwas is these feel like they last, like the feedback, the tactile feedback, and the way they spring back up feel a lot more consistent than the Sanwa buttons to me. Over time, the Sanwa buttons sort of felt like they were going flat, if that makes sense. Getting a little worn, and I had to switch them out. But eventually I found these. So these are all these up here, the directionals and the kick and the punch. These are all 24 millimeters, and this is one big 30 millimeter button. And you'll find that the advantage to switching out buttons on a hitbox like this, you'll be able to find these 24 millimeter gamer finger buttons pretty readily, right? I was able to get these in like a week from Focus Attack, which is pretty hard to do now because everybody wants the 30 mil. So I ordered all these and I forgot to order the 30 mil. I had to wait 2 weeks for this, and I only had to wait like a week for these because they were in stock, because not a lot of people were buying 24 millimeters at the time. So that's an advantage to this. As well as it's pretty easy to work on, right? So the way this plexi comes off is you take the back, right? You unscrew all this, and then you pop these little rivets out, and then the plexi lifts off, and then you pull the buttons out from the back. And you can customize it pretty much like any stick, right? It's really easy. The only thing is the first time you do it, the buttons, the connectors, the terminals on the back of the buttons that you have to pull out, they don't come out very easily. You have to use like pliers and stuff, and I definitely ripped a few of those out and had to crimp the wire and wrap wrap the wire around the contacts on the back of these buttons. But it holds up, and it's really nice, really good build quality on both of these, right? Both of these are very good build quality. As far as pros for playing on a hitbox, right? To me, it's always felt like I've had way more control movement-wise, because on the lever, you sort of have to feel out the lever when you're moving around, when you want to maybe micro walk in Street Fighter, or do very precise movements and not that don't require you to push the lever all the way to the ends of the gate. So if you have a square gate, you're not hitting the sides of it, and if you have an like the octagon gate, you're not hitting the sides, and then if you have a circle, obviously you're not hitting the ends of the circle. It just overall felt like I was way more in control, and I can make more precise movement using buttons instead. And if you play Tekken, obviously the Korean backdash is going to be a lot easier than having to do it on the lever, right? If you're not used to it, that is. The way you do it on the lever feels I don't know. I guess once you get it down, it feels consistent. But on here, it is a lot easier, but there still is a rhythm to it, right? It's like back, back, down, back, back, or whatever. But you can't just spam it, right? There's still a rhythm to it. It's just a lot easier pressing two buttons than it is to do it with the lever for me. I don't really play Tekken anymore, but when I did, this was a lot easier, obviously. And then another pro I would say that might be personal to me. It kind of feels like when I switch from the lever to this that it felt more engaging to play. Right, I think I would compare it to driving like an automatic car to driving a manual car. It felt like I was way more engaged because I'm doing a lot more with my hands with this. Right, I'm inputting things using a lot more buttons than having to just use my wrist. And I don't know, it just felt a lot more engaging when I started, and it still does feel a lot more engaging to play on all button format than it did playing on a lever. And that is probably just my preference, right? That's probably just me. If you're used to playing on a lever, then obviously you're going to feel more engaged on a lever. Another thing, like I said previously, if you came from PC, right, like I did, and you're used to playing on sort of this layout, right, spacebar and then WASD up here, it translates very well to the hitbox, right? You can see that this is your spacebar basically, this is your ASD, and these are your other buttons. And I can even put if you are interested in switching to the hitbox, I will put a diagram in the description that basically just shows you how to set up the hitbox layout on your keyboard. So if you don't want to spend all the money on one of these, or you're not planning on traveling very much because of COVID and there's not really anything to travel to right now, and you don't want to spend the money, you can definitely put that layout on your keyboard. It's the exact same layout that you would use on the hitbox. And what some of my other friends have done, or that I suggested they do, was if you have an old keyboard laying around, like in your closet or something, you can just set your keybinds up and then pull these keycaps out that are in your way. Because a lot of people complain that their hands are too big and they can't do inputs because they're gonna fat finger these buttons, like any of these. Just pull these keycaps out if you wanted while you're playing on an old keyboard. And you can connect two keyboards to your computer, one to navigate and just one to play on if that's something you wanted to try out. As far as cons go, I play a motion character in Street Fighter, and every game I play motion characters. I don't play charge characters. These hitboxes work very well for charge characters, and a lot of people have trouble doing the inputs on motion characters because, again, you are very engaged and you are having to move your fingers a lot more than you're probably used to. And you're moving your fingers in directions that you're not really used to, right? Like, I think DP on player 2 side gives people a lot of trouble when they start, right? Like that. Because you're not used to using this finger very often, usually, to do stuff like that. So that can be a deterrent for some people when they're starting. But if you stick with it, you'll get it eventually. I still have problems doing that too. Also, buffering, for me, is sometimes an issue because your hands get into a pattern, right? Your hands get into a pattern of inputting quarter circle forward, maybe kick. Like on Karen, for example, in Street Fighter, you're supposed to buffer, like you buffer a quarter circle into a kick, right? But your hands get so into a motion of doing that over and over again that it's hard to stop yourself and just buffer it, which obviously is a personal thing, but it sometimes that muscle memory betrays you, and you have to sort of let that system 2 thinking kick in and stop your hands sometimes. While on a lever, you could just let go of the lever, right? But on this, sometimes it's a little harder. One more thing I want to compare to is this, right? The PS4 Pad. Obviously, to me, I don't know if this is the right way to think about it, but I feel like this is just a laid out version of this in a sense, right? Whenever I started playing, I couldn't do that. You know how people rub their thumb on the D-pad to sort of get the inputs out? I had a lot of trouble doing that, and that's why I started playing on stick. But this feels like a happy medium between both, right? So you have the stick layout with these buttons, but then you have sort of a D-pad layout on this side with the directions. So if that is something that sounds interesting, then I think you should really give it a shot. And give it a shot on your keyboard before you make this jump. That was something I didn't do, right? I just purchased this, and I didn't even know that it was the same layout as a keyboard. It just looked a lot easier for me to try than the stick was, so I went ahead and pulled the trigger and bought it. But if you want to be a smart consumer, definitely try it on that first. And like I said, I'll go ahead and leave the picture for that in the description so you can see it and set it up for yourself. It'll be in Street Fighter notations, but it's the same for pretty much every game. Anyways, I think that's it. If you guys have any questions about the Hitbox, the big one, the little one, or just Hitbox in general, please let me know, and I'll try and help you out.